And this is the wrap up for season 4. Sienna, how good was this season?
It was great. I think the amount of people and the amount of stories we heard this season was amazing.
How many episodes did we do in total? It was about 10 or so.
About 10 episodes this season.
Do you have a favourite?
Oh, that's hard. I loved actually the last episode that's just come out with Martin and learning about his lived so many different lives in different countries. That was really interesting. But I think different stories from different episodes really resonated. So, yeah, it was great. What was your favourite?
Oh, well, I love a bit of horse racing. So I don't really have a bet these days, but I do enjoy going to the races and having Tom Waterhouse on. His journey from, growing up in the famous Waterhouse household. I didn't realise his grandfather was a bookie and his dad's a bookie, and then he effectively was the first one in Australia that turned from, betting at the racetrack to create a digital platform, which he grew and now runs Waterhouse VC, which is very successful. So really insightful listening to him and meeting him, very intelligent and a great guy.
Yeah, I think being able to speak to him firsthand about his experiences from literally working at the races one day a week with his dad to where he is today and being able to sell his business for like 30 mil at 30 or something along those lines. It's just, really inspiring to hear that firsthand.
Yeah, definitely a great operator. But I think I've become a Bitcoin specialist after this season because I've had 2 Bitcoin people on the podcast. We had Jonas Benner, who works at AMP Super, and he's very intelligent. He talks about Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining, and he breaks down the complicated words that I have no idea about into layman's terms, which where our listeners will be able to understand, which was great. I think that was episode 30.
Yeah. Yeah, episode 30, yeah. Yeah, I think that episode could have honestly been like a bit of a short course in itself on how Bitcoin operates and how it works and what are the different functions and processes of how, like, what actually makes Bitcoin what it is. So that was really interesting to sit in on because I think Bitcoin and, digital assets, the words get thrown around, but nobody really knows what they mean until they start researching. So that was a really interesting conversation to sit in on as well.
Yeah, well, he talked about mining Bitcoin and what, how that's created, how that happens. So that was quite insightful. The other thing is, leading to that, we had Ryan McMillan on from Merkle Tree Capital.
Yep.
And he had the best performing fund in Australia in 2022, I think it was.
Yeah, 2 years in a row actually.
Oh, was it? Yeah, I think one year did 140%. So he runs a crypto and gold fund. And what was quite interesting, he worked in the UK for a period of time and he worked for an investment bank and he helped set up an investment fund for the Rolling Stones, which was quite unique. Yeah. So he chats about that, which that was episode 37. So have a listen to that. And I think that the one thing I've really loved about this season is we have had different people that run different funds and have quite diverse backgrounds. Like even if we look at we had Mike Harut on, who's at Munro Partners. They're an Australian growth equity fund manager, and they won a climate change fund. And talking about climate change and ESG and how that, what his filtering process is and what his background is was quite unique too.
Yeah, and what sustainable investing actually is, and learning that he's a lecturer at Melbourne Uni and he wants more people coming into this industry to know what it is and learn about it and learn the importance of it. So him kind of being a leader in that space and speaking to us about where he started and how he's, getting the next generation into it as well that was really interesting.
It was. And then we had probably the opposite, where we had Rick Squire on from Acorn Capital, and he runs a resources and energy fund. And he's been to Africa. How many times? He's been to Africa like 20 times.
Yeah, something.
Multiple countries. Yeah. And he shares his insight into looking at, mining exploration companies and what to look for and key management in countries where you want to invest and countries where you don't want to invest into. And his fund did 80% last year return. So, exceptional numbers there.
Yeah. The fact that he was a geologist, that was his first career, and then moved into finance and has used that kind of niche experience, but also just perspective, and brought that into his his success in finance was
Yeah.
really interesting to listen to. I think he talked about how he was at a country, I can't remember if maybe it was South America or maybe he was in one country in Africa, but while he was there, actually I think it was Malawi. He was in
Yeah.
Malawi, and while he was there, they were still fighting the Taliban. And so he was at the airport and there was like the UN, the French, the US, like all the air forces still
Yeah.
there. And so, there's so much risk involved in what he does, but how interesting it just learning about different places and different countries and being on the ground is so unique, especially in comparison to a lot of the other stories we got to hear.
Yeah. And I love learning about different investment funds and processes because we also, I think episode 34, Jonathan Nurick came on and he's based in Sydney. They're the fund, they run about $600 million and their focus is a lot about let's look at companies that can grow their dividend over any given cycle. And that's a good indication of how well the company can grow their share price and market cap. So that's their strategy. And he talks a lot about that. And he talked about one stock, which was quite interesting, which we spoke about off air, which was Wingstop. And if you have a look at our socials and listen to the podcast, Jonathan talks about that and their business model, how it's, really unique and doing well. And, they are exploding and growing all across the world.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting parts of that discussion was how they evaluate businesses. And with Wingstop, they needed to know that Wingstop could get over to 100 units or 100 locations within one country, within at least 3 differently, like culturally different places. So that was how they evaluated the whether or not the business would be a success. And they saw that and it happened. And that's when they decided that they wanted to be a part of it. And it's, the same, like it opened in Sydney. It's not in Melbourne yet, hopefully soon, but in Sydney, they did minimal marketing for the opening of the store. And even on the, day one, there was lines down the street at 9 a.m. for chicken wings.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how they researched the company before they decided to be a part of it. And it was really interesting.
And it's quite interesting. I wasn't aware of this, but you did share this with me, Sienna. Maybe it's my age versus your age. But there's this thing where people like video themselves eating food.
Yeah,
and
mukbang.
it's like TikTok now. It's a big thing, right?
Yeah.
So everyone is helping them promote their product without getting paid ultimately.
Yeah, well, I think that was probably the biggest thing about Wingstop. And even a few others like Raising Cane's, maybe a competitor, I don't know if I should mention. But, people in the US doing these videos, showing themselves eating these delicious fast food. And because that kind of, that posting can reach Australia, it almost creates a demand, like some demand that's come not from the actual company itself, but from consumers. So, it's interesting to observe.
Yeah, definitely. And then we go to the other side of the equation where we've got episode 36. We had Stephen Orr on the podcast from the US. That was our first VC podcast we've done. So quite interesting, big personality, Stephen. He's very American, which we love. He showed, heart on the sleeve. He worked with President Clinton in the White House.
He worked on that campaign. That was amazing to hear. Like, very unique.
Very unique. And now he set up his own fund. It's like an AI tool and trading platform and a subscription-based model, which is very unique. And he's got some really interesting stories. He's presented on CNN. And he lived in New York. He's worked in sports media. So that's quite unique. And looking at his platform, which is exceptional. Actually, I'm looking forward when I head to the US later in the year to catch up with him in person and talk about sort of everything really, politics, sport, business, finance. So he's created.
It's an interesting time to have all those discussions. I think as well, him talking about AI and being able to embrace it and actually leverage everything good that it can do for the finance industry, because there's still, I think we're in that in-between period where there's a lot of companies who are so reluctant to introduce and to embrace AI, but it's almost getting to the point where you can't ignore it anymore and it needs to be kind of integrated any way that you find fit. So I think him really leveraging that opportunity and being using it in a positive way and creating a positive impact was really interesting to hear.
Yeah, definitely. It's very unique. And then I think we've mentioned almost everyone. We left Mr. Andrew Mickey episode 29, and he's quite interesting because he runs they run like a multi-asset fund, so looking at total portfolio construction, which is a very different view. And they do invest in direct equities themselves, but it's more about, okay, what macro factors are going to affect the portfolio. And we're recording this on the 20th of March, and it'll probably come out in a few weeks' time. But there's a lot of uncertainty globally with inflation and oil prices and the war in the Middle East.
Yeah.
So that there's lots of factors that determine different asset classes, and he spoke about that. Actually, I forgot about Martin Simpson, which is our last episode. I was going to say Martin Simpson, because we spoke a lot about the war in the Middle East.
Well, what's interesting is that he actually lives in Dubai, so he kind of got one of those last flights out to Melbourne before all travel was kind of suspended, and he talked about that, and that was being kind of seeing it firsthand and having that perspective and bringing that into everything he does, and even serving in Iraq, and he's lived in so many different countries, just that perspective and that
and great personality as well. I cracked a few jokes. Yeah, we actually had a beer after the episode because we don't normally we normally record first thing in the morning, but we did do an episode at 5 p.m. and he was had some spare time, so we had a bit of we had a beer after work after the podcast. I guess it's our work, and had a good laugh. So it was good, but that's pretty much the wrap up for season 4. I can't believe season 4. We've recorded lots of episodes now. I've had some exceptional guests. Our listener number increased. One thing I would say is please like us on, if you're listening through Spotify, follow our Instagram, TikTok, because it means that the more listeners that, click subscribe and follow, that means that, we're going to get the opportunity for other people to get made aware of this as well. So if you do listen, you do like the podcast, please like, share, tell your mates, because we would really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, there's every single episode that we've put out, there's something to gain and something to learn from every single one of our guests. No matter your background. And I think that goes to show based on all the differing backgrounds of each guest. So yeah, definitely share with friends. Follow us on Instagram for all of our updates. We're excited for season 5, but it's just been such an amazing run so far. 4 seasons of this, and we're getting better each episode, and yeah, it's just been amazing to be a part of.
Yeah, and we hope you've enjoyed listening in. If you do have any guests that you want to hear from, let us know. Send us a message, and there's a good chance we probably know them or know a way to get them on the podcast. So, really excited for season 5. There's a lot in the background working on this, so just keep an eye out, and we'll catch up with you soon.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Sounds
Disclaimer. This podcast exists for informational and entertainment purposes only. The personal opinions of the speaker and guests do not represent the view of any other party. If this recording contains reference to financial products, that reference does not constitute advice nor recommendations and may not be relied upon.